Friends, welcome back to our video lecture series. In the last class, we have discussed about the simple journal entry. Simple in the sense that when there was only one transaction involved, or when we were doing the entries or passing the entries related to a single transaction. Say, for example, you purchased some goods, sold some goods, purchased some furniture, sold some furniture, transactions like that, wherein only one type of transaction was involved. In today's class, we will be talking about the compound journal entries wherein transactions of more than one type would be involved and we'll be trying to make a single journal entry out of that, right? So friends, when we talk about the journal entries as we have already seen, there would be simple journal entries wherein only one type of transaction was involved. Say for example, if you have purchased goods for cash, 10,000. What you would say, you would simply say purchases account debit to cash account. Say for example, if I tell you that I have purchased goods from Mr. A of 10,000, I have paid him a cash of 2,000. And I said that the remaining amount would be paid, the remaining amount of 8,000 would be paid in installments, say for example. Then what I need to do is either I have two options. What are those? The first would be I would be passing more than one single entry, which means first I would say that I have purchased goods from Mr. A, which means purchases account debit to Mr. A, 10,000. Then I would be saying paid cash to Mr. A. For that I would say A's account debited 2,000 to cash 2,000. The third entry would automatically come out by way of this entry that from A I have bought goods worth 10,000, I have paid cash worth 2,000, which means there is a balance of 8,000 pending in the accounts of A, which is payable from my side. So what I can do is I can either pass these two entries which are called as a single entry, or I would be passing a compound entry which would be a combination of these two entries. So our class would be dedicated for the transactions of this type today, right? So what I can do is I can pass either more than one single entry, or what I do is I pass one compound entry which would be involving all the accounts involved here. Let's take an example by saying that on 1st of January, Achilles started a business with cash 20,000, land 30,000, building 50,000 and vehicle or a car worth 50,000. Now again I have two options. Either I pass the simple entries wherein what I'll be doing, I'll be passing one entry for cash brought, the other entry for land brought, the third entry for buildings bought into the business, and for vehicle which has been brought into the business. Or what I can do is I can pass a single entry, single compound journal entry, which would be including all these transactions. So let's see how. So this would be my format for the journal entries. I have a column called the date. I have a column called particulars. This one stands for the ledger folio or the page number of the ledger wherein this transaction would be transferred. This would be the debit amount in terms of rupees, and this would be the credit amount in terms of rupees. Right? So what I would do, I would be starting this with the date of the transaction. The date of transaction of 1st of January. So I would say 1st January. What are the accounts which are involved here? One account is the cash account, the other one is the land account, the third one is the building account, the fourth is the vehicle or car account. And if you remember our earlier class wherein we talked about how to pass the journal entries, therein you would find what are the accounts to be debited and what are the accounts to be credited. If you are still confused with that, I would request you to go to that video and find out as to which accounts are to be debited and why, which accounts to be credited and why, right? So here we find that these accounts, the cash account, land account, building account and vehicle or car account are to be debited. So how would I write this? I would say cash account debited. In the debit column, I would write the amount which is 20,000. The next account is the land account. So I would say land account debited. This is to the tune of 30,000. The next account is the building account. So I would say building account debited. This is for 50,000. Then I would say vehicle account or the car account debited with rupees 50,000. Since all these amount represent the capital of Mr. Akhil, I would say the account to be credited would be to Akhil's account or Akhil's capital account. This account is to be credited. How much is the amount? The amount is 1,50,000. So I would say 1,50,000 is the credit amount. And you know that the total of the debit should always be equals to the credit. Then we find that the debit total is 150 and the credit total is 150. What I would do is I would write the total of this page 1,50,000 on the debit side and 1,50,000 on the credit side. Clear? What we are supposed to do is first we need to identify the accounts which are involved. The second thing what we need to do is we need to see which accounts to be debited and which accounts to be credited. And we have discussed this topic at length in our previous classes. So if you are still confused with that, I request you to go to the previous videos wherein the rules for debit and credit are given. If that is clear to you, this would be a cakewalk for you, right? Let us take another example wherein we say that on 5th of January we have purchased goods from Raju worth 50,000 and we have paid cash of 10,000 rupees. Similarly, on the same day we said that we have sold goods to Sohan for 75,000 and received cash of 25,000. Now what we are supposed to do is we need to find out that the total purchase is worth 50,000, of which we have paid 10,000 in cash today itself, which means automatically the amount payable to Mr. Raju would be 40,000. Similarly, goods worth 75,000 sold to Sohan, for which we have received a cash of 25,000 simultaneously. So again we have two options, either to pass two entries for this, one for purchasing that, the other one for paying cash. Similarly, passing two entries for the sales transaction, one for selling the amount and the other one for receiving the cash. Or when we are talking about the compound entries, we can pass a single entry for the single transaction involving more than one account. So let's see how. Again, the format of our journal entries. And the total in the previous page was 1,50,000. So I would say the balance which has been brought forward is to the tune of 1,50,000. And the transaction is on 5th of January. So I would be writing the date here, 5th January. I would say purchase of goods from Raju, which means purchases account debit. How much is that? 50,000. Paid cash of 10,000 to cash account. When we pay cash, we say cash account is to be credited. Cash paid 10,000 and the amount is payable to Raju for 40,000 rupees. Clear? So this transaction stands for the purchase of goods. So we would say purchased goods from Raju, paid cash to him 10,000. Clear? This completes our journal entry, which is the compound journal entry, right? I said that we can either pass two entries, one for purchasing the goods, the other one for paying the cash. The net result would be the same. So it is always advisable. That was for the simple transactions, simple journal entries. or single journal entries were for beginners. Now since we are used to the terms debit and credit, the account to be debited and credited, we can use the compounded entries also, compound journal entries. Similarly, on the same day, we have sold goods to Sohan for 75,000, received cash 25,000. So the accounts involved here would be Sohan's account, number 1, cash account, number 2, and sales account, number 3. We have received cash 25,000, sold goods worth 75,000, amount receivable from Sohan would be 50,000. How to write the journal entry for this? We would say cash account debit, means cash has been received. How much is it? 25,000. Sohan's account debit to the tune of the amount receivable. How much is the receivable from Sohan? It is 50,000. To sales, what is the total amount of sales? 75,000. You would find that the total of debit is equals to the total of credit, right? And the narration would be being goods sold to Sohan for 75,000, received cash 25,000, or receivable 50,000 balance. Now what we need to do is we need to put the totals here. How much is the total? 150 was the total there. Then we have added 50,000, which is 2 lakh. 2,75,000 on the debit side, 2,75,000 on the credit side. I hope this is clear. Then the next transaction is on 19th of January. We have paid a salary of 5,000, shop rent of 10,000, electricity of 7,500. Again we have two options, one to pass three entries, one for the salary account, the other one was shop rent, the third entry for the electricity bill expense. Instead of that, what we can do is alternatively we can pass a single compound entry, which would be a combination of the payment for these three accounts. Let's see. Again the format of our journal entries. The opening balance would be 2,75,000 on the debit side, 2,75,000 on the credit side, which is nothing but the total of the previous page. To this what we would do, we would be making three entries. So what are the accounts involved here? One is the salary account, 5,000. Second is the shop account or rent account, 10,000. Then it would be electricity account, electricity expenses account, 7,500. One account would be cash account because you have paid cash. When nothing is mentioned, it is assumed that the payment is made in cash. Had it been mentioned in this question that the payment has been made by way of a check, we would say this would be bank account in place of cash account. But since nothing is mentioned, we would be assuming that this is a transaction in cash. So the fourth account would be cash account, and cash account would be the total of these three accounts, which is 22,500. Clear? So my entry would be, since these three are expenses and we know that all the expenses are debited when incurred. So the entry would be salary account debit with 5,000 rupees. Electricity expense account debit with 7,500 rupees. Rent account debit or shop rent account debit with 10,000. And the cash account is to be credited because cash being an asset moved out of the business or the balance of an asset going down, and we know that when the balance of an asset goes down it has to be credited. So the credit would be by 22,500 rupees. Now this would be my final, since we do not have any other transaction, this would not be balance carried forward, this would be the closing balance. And this balance would be the total of all the debits and credits here. So how much is the debit and credit here? This total comes to 22,500. So 2,75,000 plus 22,500 comes to 2,97,500. This should be the balance on the debit side and on the credit side. I hope the concept of compound journal entries is clear by this time. It is very simple. What we need to do is we need to combine 2 or 3 transactions which happen on a same day or which are having a nature of a similar type. We would club that together and make one entry instead of passing more than one journal entries. So this is called as the compound journal entries. Again, I repeat, we have 2 options: either pass multiple single entries or you pass a single compound entry. This would be less time consuming for you. Clear? So this is all about the compound journal entries. In the next class, we would be talking about the entries of purchase of assets, not the goods. Till now, we have discussed about the items which are being purchased for the purpose of resale in the business, which are called as goods. In the next class, we'll be talking about the purchase of assets. Then we'll be talking about the entries related to withdrawal of cash or goods for personal use by the owner of the business. Then we'll see the discount related journal entries. So in the next class, we'll be talking about some special transactions which are not of the general nature. Clear? Thank you so much and bye.